We're here today with Ivan. Ivan and I have known each other for a fair while. But Ivan, fill us in and tell us a little bit about the cliff notes of your career to get to where you are now and yourself.
All right, just a really quick overview. Started off in policing, specialised in fatal crash investigations, worked at the mortuary, progressed from there into the CIB homicide squad, and then from there into private industry, into the health industry, and then into the transport industry and safety. I was in investigations or safety roles all along the way, and that's sort of how I fell into this role at the moment.
Brilliant. And what about you outside of safety? Tell us about Ivan outside of work, mate.
Pretty boring. A dad, a husband. I've got my hobby. I like my obviously in the background. I've got a bit of Lego in the background there. And collect cars, small cars, hobbies, and catching up with friends. So it's pretty straightforward. Nothing exciting at all.
And how did you get into safety, Ivan?
Yeah, look, I think from the background that I had in policing and being involved in investigating crashes, fatal crashes, working at the mortuary where we did a lot with the deceased and certificate life extinction, a few other bits and pieces like that without going into too much detail, reporting to the coroner. A lot of it was safety focused, especially when reporting to the coroner. You're doing a lot of investigating around why things happened rather than looking for blame or liability or prosecution. So I had two worlds there. I had where you can investigate and look to see why things happen, and if somebody breached some laws and you prosecute. On the other hand, when you're investigating for the coroner, you're looking at identifying why incidents or events or crashes happened, and then coming up with recommendations for the coroner that the coroner can then look at and use in their findings as well from the coronial investigations they may do.
I meet quite a lot of people coming out of the police force, Ivan. They're asking for the advice on wanting to get into safety. But I guess early on in your career, you must have had a fair few learnings. What would be the biggest piece of advice you'd give to your younger self, mate?
Look, what I'd give to myself again is take my time, not to rush. Ask a lot of questions and get a lot of advice, because unfortunately you tend to do things on your own, and sometimes some of the decisions you make aren't really the right decisions, even though you do it with the best of intentions. But to ask a lot of questions, get the right advice, and surround yourself with people who have got knowledge, because it's not everybody will have different knowledge sets and skill sets. Not one person will have everything. So surround yourself and get to know a lot of people with various skill sets and various bits of knowledge that you can sort of draw on that will help you out throughout the career, I suppose. I mean, measure twice, cut once, all those adages. Just be careful with what you're doing, because sometimes the industry, you don't get a second chance. It can be fairly unforgiving, and if you make a mistake, especially with safety, as you know, the consequences can be quite dire. We've had a fatality. Unfortunately, there are no second chances in safety if you don't get it right. So, I would say take your time and don't be scared to ask a lot of questions.
Right. So, Ivan, what do you look for when you're hiring safety professionals?
Look, I like to look at somebody who's got initiative, who's not scared to ask questions, who've got motivation and drive. You can teach all the other things, but if they don't have those initial skill sets or those character traits, then it's going to be pretty hard to motivate somebody to come in on Monday morning or to travel, to go to site, to do the work, and to use initiative to get up, to do be a part of the meeting, to go and interact and communicate. Obviously, somebody who's got really good interpersonal skills and communicating skills, that's integral. I think that's probably the key in the industry. If they can't communicate, I don't like sitting behind a laptop and managing behind Outlook. I'd rather the people be out face to face, walking around, being in the yard, being in the warehouse, being out on the site, speaking to people, And you'll be surprised how much people are willing to talk, how much information you can get, and it's valuable information that can be quite critical in managing risk. But look, if somebody is keen and they want to get up and get their hands dirty, so to speak, then they're going to have a great career ahead of themselves. I mean, even at my late stages in life, I'd like to be outside rather than the computer. So if they've got those, I suppose, skill sets and those characteristics, then they've won me straight away. And because the rest you can develop, the rest they can learn.
So as someone that would probably be one of the more academically qualified safety professionals that you come across with the PhD, right? And the study towards that. I mean, how important do you think, tertiary qualifications and beyond, upper tertiary qualifications, masters, etc., are to a professional joining the industry or in mid-career?
Look, first and foremost, I would say to people, go out and get the real life experiences, all right? Because that's really critical. Because you can go and study and learn everything in your head, know everything in your head, but if you haven't got the interpersonal skills to apply it, it's worthless.
Yeah.
Go out, get personal skills, get those skills where you can speak to people, and then as you go along in the roles that you're settled in, then start with the studies and do it gradually as well. I mean, there's no rush or pressure to go and do a master's. I don't agree with these 1 week diploma courses. I don't agree with these surefire, quick couple of days investigation courses. I think it's on the job training with a good mentor or a good team, and then actually going out and when you go to study, complement your work with your study. Don't pick something that's completely different to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Pick something that's going to complement what you're doing, and you'll find that you'll enjoy it a lot more, and you'll be a lot more successful in your study outcomes as well. And you'll enjoy your study as well, because it's a lot of commitment, it's a lot of time, and you'll find I actually wished I'd done this earlier, done the studies earlier, but I didn't start doing the studies till I was in my 40s, and I learned a lot, and a lot that I wish I'd known when I was younger. But that's just the decisions I made, and you just sort of, I suppose, deal with those decisions at the time.
I think that's a good point as well, right? Like I've always found, like from a personal sense as well, like when you start doing, masters and postgrad, it helps when you've got some life experience, versus say early 20s, finishing undergrad straight out. Like I wouldn't have the concentration. I don't think I was too eager to start working. And B, it's just the application of what you're actually learning versus compared to what you learn in undergrad, right?
Yeah.
What's leadership?
Yeah, exactly that. Enjoy your work.
Well, there's so much to learn, I think, in your 20s and 30s,
Without going into all these leadership. Yeah, leadership. Look, if you've got somebody who says and does what they say they do, that they don't contradict their actions or their words, I think that's leadership, integrity, being somebody that can nurture your team. I'm very big on developing the team because it makes my job a lot easier, because if they're better at their job, it's going to make my job a lot better. I know it sounds selfish, but it's the fact. If I develop them, get them trained, send them on courses, give them opportunity, get them to make decisions, and they come back to me and tell me they've done X, Y, and Z, and I think that's a great one. That's excellent. It just makes my job a lot easier. And I'm a firm believer that businesses should never be reliant on any one person.
Yeah.
So if I'm not there, the business can continue to function. You've got they're competent and capable, can do the job, and can fit into your role. And look, if they're still there, I'd like to see them go and apply for opportunity where they can go to bigger, better, higher things. I think that's what leadership, in a way, is about, to develop your team, to get them to sort of look beyond where they are at the moment in 5 or 7 years down the track, to see themselves in a better place.
There's a lot to be said about, sharing knowledge versus, hoarding knowledge at a senior level and as a leader. And I think, it's often something talked about, but sometimes perhaps not done as much as it's talked about.
Yeah, you're spot on. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people get scared. They become protective, want to protect their jobs. End of the day, I mean, you want your job to be a lot easier, a lot more enjoyable. The way you're going to do that is by developing your team to make their job a lot easier and more enjoyable, because who wants to come to a toxic workplace? You want to make sure you work together and you're achieving the same outcomes. Unfortunately, some leaders manage instead of lead, and that's where some of the problems arise.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So touching on that, who's been a positive influence on you and in your professional life as well?
Yeah, good question. Look, I suppose I've had a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. I've had a lot of people along my career who've had that piece of the jigsaw puzzle that fitted in to the piece of the jigsaw at that time.
The person you needed at the time. Yeah.
And they were relevant at the time because of the area I was working at the time. They gave advice, but there's one particular person that stood out when I was doing the fatal crash investigations, and he was an industry expert, and he's sort of the one that taught me just to be patient, just to make sure that if you do find something, have the evidence to support what you find. Don't rush into things. Don't rush into conclusions. Don't be pressured into conclusions, and do it at your own pace as well, because that's where mistakes are made, and those mistakes could have a profound impact on other people's lives or livelihoods. And he said not to forget that really what you're there for is to represent the families that have been impacted upon these incidents, and you need to be fair and balanced without bias. He was probably the most influential person I had in giving me that direction. That was early on in the piece, and I'm still friends with this guy today. We still speak today, and that's after 35 years. So I would say the most influential person. Yeah.
That's great.
I know we've talked about this. I'm pretty sure we have, maybe once or twice. But where do you see the profession evolving? Where do you see it going in the future, short term and long term?
Okay, sure. Look, I'm not a fan of this rolling all the functions into the one, like HSEQ, health, safety, environment.
Come on now, come on. That's what we're all about here.
Drum up more business for you here. Quality in itself is a specialised area, and you've got specialised functions, which is really a full-time job. Environment, last time I checked with environment, that in itself is a full-time specialist function. You've got your Department of Environment and Protection Authority that specialises in environmental protection. You've got health and safety, and with things happening nowadays, especially around mental health and wellness and safety and the laws and the changes, you've got so many specialty functions rolled up into one, which then is, here you go to the safety person, you're now health, safety, environment, quality, or health, safety, environment, security, or health, safety, environment, training. All these different jobs that's just loaded onto them. I think that needs to change in time to come, and just have specialists working in those specialist fields, focusing on safety, health, environment, quality, or training, whichever it may be. That way they can actually dedicate that time to that actual function without there being any gaps or errors being made in juggling. I suppose you're juggling 4 different roles there at once. Also don't like the idea of HSEQ or safety staff reporting through to HR departments or through to Director of People and Culture or whatever roles. People who don't have an understanding of the function or the role, I think they should be reporting through to a specialist safety professional at that level, who then either reports directly to the CEO or they report directly to the CEO, because I think part of an organisation, and if organisations are serious and they say safety first, which a lot of them and all of them say that, well, let's see the proof in the pudding. Why are they reporting through to the HR department? Why are they reporting through to People and Culture? Those people wouldn't know much about safety, if anything at all, and yet they've got to be managing a safety function. Where a safety function, if it's so critical in most other businesses that I've sort of dealt with.
Yeah. How do you feel, I guess, at that? I know exactly what you mean. There's a role on the market at the moment, which is HSEQ TC.
Yeah.
And that's a big one. But effectively, what that is an umbrella term for all of the functions. It reports to, it's a general manager, reports to a CEO, but provides leadership across all those functions. But how do you feel about that? Because I also have to agree that, especially environment, like when we recruit environmental roles, they're 100% standalone. Like there's not many safety people that can properly wear the dual hats of environmental scientist or an ESG specialist.
I agree. I couldn't wear environment because I don't know much about environment at all. Because of the way that the industry is going, and the way we're progressing and tracking, they're specialist functions that require specialist skills with specialist studies. Yeah. And they deserve to have those roles filled by specialists in that area to give it the respect that it deserves. And unfortunately, I don't see that happening. When you get multiple hats, you're going to make a mistake. You can't do four jobs. You can't do 4 jobs at once. But I see that hopefully changing. I don't know when or how far down the track. If it doesn't change, it needs to change.
And there's some businesses, I mean, you look at principals, they're typically more inclined to do it versus the contractors. But we are starting to see, even in contractors, major contractors splitting off environment, as one to begin with. But it definitely does mean a lot of hats for a safety professional to wear. I had a last question for you. Would you do anything different, Ivan, if you could go back? Would you, in terms of your career?
Yeah, I would. Well, actually, maybe not. I would say that, I suppose, one of the things that you raised earlier on, what would I give? What would I say to a new safety person if they came into the industry? What would I say to them? Safety industry is much like the medical industry. Like the medical industry, you got very different and very specialties. You got neurology, you got cardiology, you got orthopedics, you got all those specialties, and you get specialists working at one function. Safety is much the same. You'll have rail, aviation, maritime, oil and gas, mining, electrical, specialty functions. And what I would say was to anybody new coming in, even myself, pick an area that you're actually good at, that you enjoy, that you have knowledge in, experience and competence, and focus on that one area and develop your skills in that one area. And that will help you throughout the rest of your career in working within organisations. I mean, it's really difficult for somebody to come across a rail background to all of a sudden fit into an aviation background. Absolutely. I mean, they're all safe, applications different. And that's what I would say to somebody young. And to myself, I probably, instead of being I stayed in transport and remained in transport because that was what I knew because of the road safety background I had investigating fatalities. I probably would have done my studies a lot earlier. I would have probably done them in my 30s rather than my 40s to get myself in a better position, because your sphere of influence and the impact you have will be minimal nowadays compared to what, if I'd done it in my 30s, I could have had probably more influence into making change or improving process or improving frameworks in that space, whereas now that opportunity may be missed.
Yeah. No, that's a great piece of advice. I also, just at what you first said, it's one of the things that I say to people a lot. I mean, there's this pushback, right? Like safety is transferable. Absolutely it is. But when you're at that mid and senior level of a career, right, it's really difficult to go from aviation to mining, right? Or mining to oil and gas. And, I use that example, when I speak to senior people that want to change careers, 20 years in, change industry, you go, if you were a hiring manager, if you were hiring for your business and you want to go on oil and gas now, what would you say? And it's really difficult, but there's also, I mean, that's just the fact of careers, you become a specialist and that's why you command such a high salary as well, because you're a specialist that other people aren't in that area. Mm-hmm.
And now you've got the accountabilities with the legislation. If you mistake, then you're the one that's got to please explain why things have happened. Yeah. No longer have they behaved in the way they did in the past. It's far more accountable. And that's why it's important that if you're going to be in the safety industry, pick a specialty and stay in that specialty and focus on it and develop your skills in that specialty instead of hopping around places.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for jumping on. I'm going to put your LinkedIn little bio in the show notes. But okay. If anyone that is in transport or any safety professional, I imagine, can reach out to you, and you do come along to our events, and we see you at the IHS occasionally as well. So, thank you very much, Ivan, for coming on and spreading your knowledge and giving us a bit of your opinion for a change, which is very good.
It's only my opinion. No one's going to have to agree with it. Like I said, it's just my views. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ivan. Cheers, mate.
Thanks.